it's a fight just to make it to the top. Gotta prove yourself, show them what you got. Number one, it's a fight just to make it to the top. Gotta prove yourself and show them what you got. Number one, it's a fight just to make it to the top. Gotta prove yourself, show them what you got. Number one, it's a fight just to make it to the top. Gotta prove yourself and show them what you got. Number one.
Welcome to Educators for Life, a winning world show with Shermanda. Coming to inspire, motivate, encourage, to shed light, and bring hope. We will share testimonies and share stories of people from around the world who have chosen to live triumphant lives on purpose, overcoming adversities. And now, a winning world show with Shermanda.
Gotta prove yourself and show them what you got. Number one.
This is the day that the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Yes, yes, yes. Great day, beloveds. This is your host and founder of the A Winning World Show. I welcome you, as always, with love, hugs, and yes, fellowship, agape-filled kisses. Where together we love, we cry, we sing, we laugh, lifting one another up, celebrating our wins and our victories through testimonies of winning stories from around the world. Today's guest is John Fuller, who has an amazing story of winning after prison. Yes, I met John. Actually, we've never met in person, but we talked over the phone by way of another great friend who I interviewed last week on the show. And we're going to have John tell his winning story on this week. So we want to welcome John Fuller, better known as Doc.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, John. How are you?
Fine. Thank you so much for asking, and thank your audience for listening.
Well, it is a great pleasure to have you joining us, and I am so looking forward to them hearing the stories that I know, and I'm sure I'll learn even more on today. So we're going to start with, where are you from, John?
I'm from central New Jersey, a small town along the shore called Keyport, which is a very multicultural area, plenty of beaches, no tall buildings. It's located about 30 miles outside of New York City.
Okay, so you're up there in the cold state.
Yes, I guess you could say that.
Well, I hope we get a little bit of that. It would be nice every now and then to get some snow, but down here in Florida, that's few and in between. So, John, tell us, go into a story about your growing up. What was life growing up for you in outside of New York?
I'd say it was a multicultural neighborhood, very, very close-knit, whites, blacks, Spanish. We played sports. Our block was relatively poor, and I think my family was the poorest family on the street. My father was an alcoholic. My mom suffered from schizophrenia, and so she would work part-time and try to keep the family together in spite of my father's issues. I would delve into sports along with my brothers and local kids in the neighborhood. We built our bicycles. We built clubhouses. We got into mischief like most children do. And we even to this day, we made very close contact with the same group of friends. We're there to support one another, often reminiscing on our childhood. And in spite of the poverty, from my perspective, we never let these things go to our head, and we've all embraced them. And personally, I think that those issues prepared me for the person that I am today.
Wow, you all built your own bicycles and
Yeah, we go in the garbage. We'd see other people that threw out the frame of a bike, and so we would take those frames home, manage to get wheels from another bike, and sometimes we would steal other kids' bikes and build our own and go bike riding and get flat tires, and knew how to fixed flat tires while we were on the road, and we used the bikes to go to stores like Kmart. You don't see a whole lot of them today, and Bradley's and all of these different stores, and we'd steal and then drive our bikes back to our neighborhood. The bikes were used to get to places to do crazy things.
Wow. But it sounds like fun. It's amazing how when you don't have, the creativity that comes forth, and, if you should have people that can take time to actually see the giftings that our children have around us, it would make a world of a difference. It's just we don't take the time, and oftentimes we don't really know what to look for. So when I hear, of people creating things that they didn't have because they didn't have the money, when they were young, it's just amazing to see the genius that lies within us all, and it's just not tapped into. So that kind of made me kind of smile.
Yes.
To know that, that is something that really, even today, we need to kind of take a step back and maybe start paying attention to what our children are doing, especially in some of the more disadvantaged areas. Because they oftentimes they will show forth the greatness that is within them, but we're not taking the time to actually see it and nurture that to bring forth a greater result in the end. So John, let me tell you, I know life happened. So what were the choices as a child, going into teenage years, that you were making that, will take us to the next place? So tell us some of the choices that you made and why you made them as a youngster that didn't have, and coming from, what we consider more of a dysfunctional type of a family. I say all families have some type of dysfunction, but it is even greater seen when there's no finances within the home.
Yeah, I think like most children, you have dreams when you look at your other friends and you see what their homes look like on the inside, and you're watching television and the media is constantly feeding you images of what the standards should be for the average family. And so as a young man, my desire was to never succumb to poverty, always figuring out a way to make things better for myself and to make things better for my mother. My father died when I was a sophomore in high school.
Wow.
And so by the time I graduated, my mother was, single, still going through issues of her own from a psychological perspective. I had 3 other brothers and a little sister. And so I went on to play basketball at Middlesex County College, and I dropped out after my mom suffered a nervous breakdown, and I had to raise my 10-year-old brother. And so, I got a job. I worked locally, and I had aspirations of being a DJ. And so friends of mine from New York City who were very strong into hip-hop in the early stages were showing me little things, taking me to different clubs in New York where the partying was really happening. And so a friend of mine moved to L.A., and I subsequently moved to L.A., and then images of grandeur just took over as a young man, and I started hustling and pimping and getting into counterfeit money and dealing with lawyers, crooked real estate agents, crooked brokers, everybody who I was dealing with was corrupt, even though they had the college degrees and had major responsibilities in banks. And so, having access to credit cards, other people's lines of credit, set me on a trend to cut corners, so to speak, to a point where I was making my own credit cards. I had a crew of people and flying all over the country, getting money and selling drugs. And, that eventually you're gonna die, you're gonna end up in jail, or, suffer some type of serious loss that will impact you forever. And so by making those choices early on, I was weaving a pattern that would eventually lead to my being incarcerated.
Wow. And it all started from having to drop out of school, okay, because your mom had a nervous breakdown. And you had to take on the role as a man in the home, for you and your sibling. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, because I had moved out of my house when I was 18. So I was in college and renting, a little efficiency apartment because I really wanted to be on my own, even though I lived 10 minutes from my mother. And so, when my mother went into a mental institution for 6 months, I took my little brother to move in with me. One of my aunts raised my little sister and my brother. And so, it didn't seem like school was paying off. It didn't seem like the hard work of other, people who were working 9 to 5s were always complaining about their job or their lot in life. And so I didn't see an end game. So when the option to hustle or work hard, it was presented before me, I chose hustling because the lawyers were hustling. The bankers were hustling. Everybody was looking for a way that was non-conducive to their growth and development. But when you're a 21-year-old kid and the lawyers are in their 40s and 50s and coming to you as a kid asking for certain things to get money also, what difference did it make to me? Whether I was going to go to college or decide to get a job if the very people who were glorified in mainstream society didn't like their professions or weren't satisfied with their financial status in life.
Wow. It's amazing. You want to, believe that all of those that are making a difference or that are holding positions in, what we consider great places that we're to look up to would be worthy of actually being looked up to. But in actuality, we know in life, it's not always that way. So, John, let me ask you, what led to you being imprisoned?
Well, the first felony I had was for counterfeiting checks, and I was doing something that the banking system in New Jersey had no knowledge of. And so I was creating accounts with fake Social Security cards, fake birth certificates from the Virgin Islands, and I would establish accounts, put money in the accounts, and then draw down and cash money on the accounts. And so once I was able to draw anywhere between $70,000 and $150,000 from an account that only had $1,500 in it, then I would close the account out. Well, I got a team of people from Los Angeles, Portland, Vegas, and, we came back to Jersey, got a lot of money, and someone ended up telling on us. I forget how it unfolded, but short of the story is that I flew from Los Angeles back to New Jersey, and I self-surrendered. I did a year in state prison. I got out, and then I had a friend who was looking to purchase drugs in Kentucky. So I made an introduction to him, and I got caught up in a drug conspiracy, and I refused to testify. And when I refused to testify, I received 10 years in federal prison.
Well, I know we have a whole lot more, the winning story to come forth, but I want to take the time to say, if no one has ever asked your forgiveness, I want to take the time to say, forgive us, as a community, and as leaders that failed you and are failing our children each and every day, even today, that's not taking the time to go out into the community to actually make a great difference, a good difference, versus using your youth and your ignorance to our own gain. Because in actuality, that's what I've heard. That's what I'm hearing. We are the ones, especially the church, our leaders, the government, those that are in our city councils. These are the people that are supposed to actually be making a difference in our communities. And hearing your story just kind of makes me cry inside, because I realize that, your story is no different than the next child that may be caught up today, caught up tomorrow, that is out there selling the drugs, not because they are cultivating it, because it's being put in the community to actually be sold. And you're pretty much a pawn. So I want to take the time to just apologize to you for that.
Yeah, and thank you, but always be mindful. And one of the things I do is I go out and talk to children today also, and free will comes into play. I had some very, very great people within my community that I disguised myself. Essentially, I was living a double life.
Yes.
And so people who were very close to me had no dream and idea that I was living the lifestyle I was. When I moved to Los Angeles, everybody from New Jersey thought I was in the entertainment industry because I was at the Arsenio Hall show one night when Ice-T went. I always had pictures with Public Enemy when they came to town. I was always at events where entertainers were, and I was DJing in clubs. And so everyone back in New Jersey thought that I was living a life in the entertainment industry. And everyone from L.A. knew me as a hustler. And so when your role models switch, I knew what I was doing was wrong, which is why when I went to prison, everyone from New Jersey was shocked, whereas people from L.A., it was no major surprise, because I knew everyone there was to know, from the entertainment industry to police officers to the lawyers. It's just that my entire social circle was crooked. And that's what I wanted. But I did know right from wrong.
You knew right from wrong, but you were still young. And I do understand it, and I thank you for that, because there are great role models. I didn't want to portray that there aren't any, but we need more. And it's great that you're actually giving back and going back into the community, because we need to see more activity taking place in the communities where these children can actually touch you, can actually reach you, and you can actually have the discernment to know the right from wrong, to know the truth from the lie, So,
yes.
But we're going to move on, because though you went into prison, John, you made it out, and this is why we're here today. Can you talk about, life at the prison and what you're doing today?
Yeah, so when I came home from prison, I was working as a personal trainer, and one of my clients had a nephew who was going to prison and wanted to know if I would talk to him and speak to him about what he would experience, because I had, confided into one of my clients at the gym about my past. So I spent what would end up being 6 to 8 hours with his nephew. I thought I was going to be there for 30 minutes or so. And after spending a lengthy amount of time with him, I leave the house, and the client comes to the gym 1 or 2 later and gave me an envelope with $1,500 in it and thanked me. And so I spoke to a good friend of mine. I told him what happened, and he said, "You should start a business doing prison consulting." So in 2004, I started prison consulting individuals who were going to prison for the very first time. And my fees were kind of steep, but it touched mainstream America in a sense that entertainers, athletes, and public figures caught wind of what I was doing. And when they found out, they started hiring me to mentor them if they were not going into prison. And then if they were going into prison, they would hire me to give them a to Z presentation and sit down on what they might experience before, during, and after incarceration. And so that's been my business since 2004. I've authored 2 books since then. I started receiving requests to go to very troubled areas to speak. So I've been to Los Angeles to deal with the violence and gangs. The city of Camden, which had the highest murder rate in the country at one point, they retained me to come in and speak to some of the youth. The veterans, I have a contract still with Veterans Affairs, and we have a lot of people who have fought for this country that have unfortunately been incarcerated and come home, and they have very difficult time finding employment. So I go in to motivate them and offer them encouragement to get them back on their feet. And over the last 3 years, I've also been training attorneys to help them better prepare their clients who are going to prison for the first time. They see it as a tool that they can keep in their toolbox and better equip their clients who will soon go to prison.
Wow. Now, John, you said you tell them about things that they need to prepare for going in, once they're in, and once they come out. Without going into full detail, can you give us just a snippet of what, one should look to do going in?
Sure. A worst case scenario might be a person who's currently on drugs or alcohol before going into prison. And let's just say they have 30 to 60 days before they self-surrender to the facility designated by the courts. Well, I would strongly suggest, number one, that they go into rehab so that they can go into prison sober.
Wow.
If they are not under any form of substance abuse, I would strongly suggest that they go to their primary physician, get a full checkup, get dental work done, make sure that their attorney, or if they have a whole bunch of money, that their financial advisor can help prepare financial statements to the courts and make sure that their money's well invested, make sure that they're given power of attorney to someone to run their business for them while they're incarcerated, because you can't run a business from prison. But a full checkup, dental work. If a person has pets, who's going to take care of my pets? What if a person is currently going through a divorce and yet he or her are on their way into prison? So speaking with a divorce attorney, which is different than a criminal defense attorney, you would want to know what your options are, particularly if children are involved. And so helping them with the planning process is crucial, because you don't want to be naive to the fact that you're going into prison. Because if you are, then you have essentially no business handled prior to incarceration. So what limited time you do have on the phone while incarcerated, you're using to try to straighten out affairs which could have been taken care of prior to being incarcerated.
Wow. Those are great preparation tips. And I won't let you, we won't go into the other details, but I wanted to find out, you've been interviewed by CNN. Name some of the TV stations that you've been on.
ABC, Hollywood Access, Entertainment Tonight, Good Day New York, Fox News, Cranes New York, I don't know.
it's quite a bit and quite an accomplishment, after, going through what you've gone through and life happening to you as it did. And like you said, choices that we make, and choices that we didn't, so it's just really an honor to have you here with us today. And, it's one of those things where you sit back and you say, you know what, if you can do it, I can do it too. People need to hear this story. There are people that have gone to prison. There are people that are heading to prison that I pray will hear this broadcast and realize, you know what, life has happened to me. And as my famous and favorite statement, I say it happened to me, but it didn't happen to me. It happened for me. So in actuality, it was a setup for your greatest life ever, and coming out. And I just want to thank you for taking this time to, be a part of the show on today and telling your winning story. Let me ask you, before we close out, tell me one of your great influencers, who influenced you the most to, go through what you've gone through and come out on the winning side.
Oh, wow. Most of my friends now are local people, in addition to people like that others may know of. Mike Tyson is a huge influencer in that he's turned his life around. Mike and I had a history, and he's a very, very intelligent, very easy person to talk to, even though it's been quite some time. But most of the people who are influence me, believe it or not, are people who have been incarcerated like myself, and yet have come home and done great things, because I've always found it difficult to learn a lot from people who have consistently won, but people who have, from the mainstream perspective, who have lost. Wow. They have really had the ability to touch my heart, because they can teach me how to get up from the ground, because they've gotten up from the ground themselves after enduring things far worse than I have.
Than you have, yes. And you know what, John, I know we'll be continuing on with our conversation, but I want to take the time to just thank you, for joining us today and taking the time to share your winning story on A Winning World. We will talk soon, okay?
Thank you so much, and thank everyone for listening.
Thanks for joining A Winning World with Shermanda. Do you have a story or testimony and would like to be considered for an interview on the show? Connect on Facebook at A Winning World or Educators for Life, or visit Shermanda.com. Telephone 904-533-5222 or email connect@educators4life.com. Tune in next week for more winning stories on A Winning World with Shermanda.
Number one.